O great oval Valhalla, coming your way right now.
Will insisted he wasn't coming unless we played that in full, so there you go.
I have a lump in my throat. I can't be the only one.
Are you familiar with what just happened there? No.
Say that again.
Do you know about montage?
I sure do. Yeah,
Okay.
Six Nations, how good.
Yeah.
I remember the first time I actually got called in to the Six Nations, it was like, wasn't the initial squad, wasn't picked for that. And I was a little bit disappointed. I was having a good season and wasn't picked. So then the Leopardstown Racing Festival was on. So went up to that, had a big blowout, back to my friend's house. The night went on very late. Racing was on the next day. We went racing again, rinse, repeat. And my battery had gone dead on my phone. And I was making the walk back from my neighbour's house back home, turn my phone on. Sometimes you get like that last 15 seconds out of it. And it was a call from Mick Carney. So I checked the voicemail, and I'd been called into the Irish squad. So arrived back home, and still living with my parents. Meet my dad in the hallway. He was getting up to go to work. I was like, "Morning." And he's like, where have you been for the last 2 days? I was like, I was up to racing. It was great crack. He was like, I can see that. And then I go, I've been called into the Irish squad. He's like, when? I was like, well, an hour and a half. So I was in no fit state to get into a car. So he ended up having to drive me down to Carton House and trained later that day, stinking of alcohol.
Wow.
But yeah, that was my introduction into the Six Nations. I'll never forget it.
Wow. Sinead, I mentioned there, coming up on 20 years, interviewing Irish head coaches. Who's your favourite Irish head coach to have interviewed?
Well, let me see. No, listen, I will say one thing about this show is that it actually gave me the chance to kind of bite a bullet and reach out to Eddie and do an interview, which was really good to do with him. But look, I think every coach is so different, aren't they? And, you can read the mood of them, like even beforehand, obviously. I'll never forget interviewing Andy Farrell before the 2021 game against England at the Aviva Stadium. And Andy used to be kind of nervous enough, coming into the job and doing those pre-match interviews. But this one, I'll never forget. He completely had my number. He was, like, before I asked the next question, he was on it. And I'll never forget, I was like afterwards going, oh no, and whatever. I remember him just walking past me and I was like, feck's sake, you had my number there. And he just laughed and I was like, oh, there's something about him today. There's something really confident about him. And that's really when the whole Andy Farrell era took off, isn't it? But it's a special place. Like, it really is a privilege, I have to say, to be pitch side, to interview coaches before and after games. It definitely is.
It always strikes me as such a tough job to be that immediate post-match interviewer. And so great job when they've won and everyone's happy.
Sure.
And that's fun, and you let them, you want them to do well in the interview, I think, and express their character and give a bit to people at home. But like that horrible balance when they lose between being fair, but then I can't let you off easy, hold you to account, they get grumpy, they don't like you. Ugh.
Sure, yeah, I mean, especially, I remember, like, between, let's say, Joe Schmidt, between just that difference between 2018 and what happened then in 2019. There was such a change. Everything was all, lovely and beautiful in 2018, and then in 2019. And I remember interviewing him for the first time. They lost a Six Nations game at the Aviva Stadium, and he was just so gutted. And, but it was such a difference there. I always kind of think in some ways you just try and take the emotion out of it, and they will respect you if you just ask the question that they probably know should be coming anyway. But it is a tough job, definitely at times. Yeah.
What was your attitude generally to post-match interviews across your time? Were you trying to send a message to studio, George Hook and the boys? Were you trying to send a message to people at home, to the players? Was it like a PR exercise? I want to look good here, or was it actually just something? So much going on, I don't even think about it.
Well, it's always difficult because you're trying to frame your response around what people just seen. And then, there's probably on TV, they have their take on it, which is usually not that close to reality, because let's be honest. Because, you got out with a picture in your head of what you're looking for, and you either got it or you didn't get it, or why didn't you get it? So you're in a much better position. But there's an emotion around it as well, and you're trying to gather your thoughts. But I would always try and frame it as what I thought at that time was the issue. Like, and I think when you're a coach, they want to know what went right today or what went wrong. Like, if you went wrong, you say, well, we got turned over too many times in a row, we didn't, our kick chase was poor. You can give them that information. But I always try that's my take on it for the moment. And then, of course, that's the first one. Then you've got to go in and meet all the press after that. So there's rounds and rounds of this, and you can pick up narratives developing because the questions start to focus on a certain thing. And it's either sometimes it's accurate and sometimes it's not. And you have to be in a position then to explain why they're talking to the wrong end,
Yeah.
So, like, and that's all, because at that stage you're actually getting tired. Because you're getting to the end of the week and you're actually fatigued. And you have to be careful as well. Like, you get some tough questions and you want to bite your lip, but you just remember that they're doing their job. That's the bottom line. We've got to be professional about it. I didn't like that question, but they're doing their job. And ask yourself, if I was with the mic, I'd probably ask the same question. And that's not easy to do when you've just lost or you're tired. It's easier to do when you've won. The questions are easier. But yeah, I just try and frame the game as you see it there and then, and give the best answer you can to people at home because they want to know. But it's not. It's a much easier interview, as you say, when you've won, and it's a much more difficult one when you've lost. There's no question about it.
Yeah, no fun. So Six Nations 2026. Not coming across much optimism about Team Ireland this year.
It's ironic we played the 2013 montage because as much as I love it, lump in the throat stuff. Does anyone remember what the tournament was like after that for Ireland? 1 win, 1 draw, 3 defeats, their worst ever Six Nations performance, and that's the kind of vibe, the cloud that feels like hanging over this tournament. The amount of injuries, the form of key players. I don't remember ever going into a Six Nations opener with not a single person I've talked to thinking Ireland will win. Not a single person I've talked to even making an argument that they'll win, even an attempt to make an argument. I think there's almost a resignation that this could be a day just to take the medicine, get bodies back on deck and build into the tournament. That's a very negative starting point for this chat, but I don't see how anyone, unless someone else has something they want to say, but I don't see an obvious positive entry point here.
We may as well just go home then.
Safe home, everyone.
Just play the montage again.
Start again.
Does anyone strongly disagree with that, though?
I think no. Look, the way the game has gone, there's still areas where it can be won and lost that we can control, and that's really important that we focus on that. And I try when I'm on the podcast or being a pundit or on commentary to try and bring that to life. And areas that we can control. The aerial contest has become so big. Can you get the ball in the right areas to give your chasers the ability to get up and compete? You look at the New Zealand game, we didn't do that well enough. We were putting the ball aerially. We weren't giving our chasers the opportunity to get up and win the ball. Against South Africa, we only won 10% of the contestables. But in the games that we've played well recently, the likes of England in round 1 of the Six Nations last year, we dominated them in the air. So that's one area that we can control, and historically we've done well. You think back to Conor Murray's box kicking, the likes of Tommy O'Brien on the wing, probably James Lowe, maybe Jacob or Osborne at fullback. They're very good aerially. That's something that we can control. We've got good kickers out of hand. So I'd be leaning on that. I think impact tackles is something that we can control. The likes of Joe McCarthy coming back into the team. We didn't have him in November. In my opinion, I think he's one of our most important players because he brings that physical impetus. The way the game has gone, impact tackles lead to turnovers. And if we can get the likes of Sheehan, Doris, McCarthy making loads of impact tackles, maybe we can come out on top. The other side of it, our attack has been our point of difference. If you think back to the 2023 World Cup, maybe we're still caught between two stools on the style of play. Are we going high into the phase count? Are we progressing up the field efficiently? And that's where I think we struggled in November. When we played well against Australia, we progressed up the field really efficiently. The likes of our cross-field kick strategy was really effective that day. When we got into the 22, we were fresh. We were able to score points, getting points on the board. So I think that's kind of tied into ruck speed, kick meters, possession. If we can get those things right, yes, we can still beat anyone on our day, but there was pessimism going into this Six Nations before the loose head crisis, injury crisis, and it is a crisis. We've only 4 teams to be missing Porter, McCarthy, and now Boyle, and going deep into that depth chart. You can talk about all these different strategies, but if your scrum doesn't hold up, you're going to be under significant pressure. But saying that, this Irish team, they're smart coaching team. They've got 2 weeks to get a strategy together. You can change things around. You can put more weight into the second row, more weight into the back row. You can figure out a way to hang in there. You can go with a 6-2 split on the bench. They can get a strategy in place that the scrum holds strong, that maybe we don't quite get parity, but even if we're 60-40, it gives us still a chance to win the game.
I think if you were on the International Space Station for the last 3 years and you arrived and you looked, you'd say, well, what's the panic about Ireland have only lost 2 Six Nations games in 3 years? We went Grand Slam, Championship, which was lost to Marcus Smith drop goal at Cloxton, right? That's like a second Grand Slam. Last year, we finished third, but points difference. Not getting the bonus point in Wales, not getting a losing bonus point against France. We shouldn't be panicking, but I think when you get under the hood, there's a lot of things at the moment that are slipping away that are really poor indicators that, we've last 6 games we scored 17 tries. France got 30, England got 25. We're down the flip chart in carries, 4th, 5th in metres made, 6th in defenders beaten, 6th in tries off turnovers, 1 try off turnover. The only stat we're leading on is bad passes. These are all facts. 61 bad passes, we're the height of bad passes. Kicking percentages, 47 kicks from Prendergast. The only other players kicked more in Prendergast were the scrum halves, So possession is down. We were at 58%, down to 50. A lot of metrics are going against us. Defence, missing 27 tackles a game. Incomplete tackles, 42 a game. They're really damaging stats. 14 tries conceded last season compared to more than we conceded in the previous 2 years. Discipline has gone to pieces. We had 3 yellow cards and 29 tests between the summer 21 and the World Cup. We're now 14 yellow cards and 16 tests. That's almost 1 per test. And the penalty count is high. So there's lots of metrics that would make you wonder, there's a lot of fixes there. And I think that
the yellow cards,
the other things are going to keep you awake at night as a coach. We're giving away these things. You cannot win a championship or perform consistently if you're on the wrong side of those stats. And you can overkill on stats, but I think those metrics are really hard to break out of. And the autumn wasn't much better, to be honest. You go through the autumn, it was very similar problems. So I would overall say, car looks not pretty polished, but lift the hood, there's lots of things in the engine that's not really working.
Luke, Matt had a really interesting stat on that. You were talking about during the week, the yellow card stat. So that's stark, but there's actually, if you gather more, it's worse.
Yeah, and if you go into discipline, so leading into the World Cup 2023 and the World Cup itself, Eddie's kind of touched on it there. It was 3 yellow cards from 29 games. So the ratio of yellow cards to games, you're looking at about 10%. The last 22 tests, there's been 22 yellow cards. So it's gone up to 100% effectively. But it's tied in with discipline within the field. It's not just yellow cards. It's giving away penalties around the middle of the field when the team isn't necessarily under pressure, and then you're giving the opposition the opportunity to progress up the field without expending any energy. Access.
You give away a penalty in the halfway line, suddenly you're 10 metres from your goal line, and it's a bare knuckle brawl to try and stop them scoring.
Yeah.
And then they win another penalty, they have advantage, the cross kick is on, everything's on. You're putting yourself under immense pressure on discipline alone. So, I know the autumn was a bit of an anomaly. We're down to 12 men against South Africa at one stage. And I would say, Ty Burns' red card against the All Blacks was a joke. But still, that discipline thing can unhinge you on an average Saturday. You cannot give up that many yellow cards and penalties. You're going to put huge pressure on yourself.
No, and even the news story this week with Bundy, that is tied in with discipline. Giving verbals to the referee, how our captains of the different provinces are conversing with the referee. We're not winning referees over the way we used to. We're not picking and choosing our arguments. We're not planting seeds in the referee's mind as opposed to saying, oh, we need to check that on the video. The referee doesn't want to hear that. But if you go with a calm, collected voice at the right time, when there's maybe a gap in the game, and say, look, I feel like they're coming in the side of the breakdown. Would you mind keeping an eye on it? The referee's not going to mind that, and you can win him over. We're certainly not doing that well. Myself and Luke were talking about it before the game. But talking back to referees, I think the RFU and the team have put a line in the sand with Bundy, and it's really unfortunate for him that he's been made an example. But I think the players will be shown footage, not just of talking back to referees, but giving away needless penalties and saying, if we don't get on top of this, guys, we're not going to have a chance.
And Ian, do you think that kind of behavioural issue is something that can be wiped out, like in a few weeks, like now that they're in camp?
Well, I remember when I was coaching the team, Ireland had a bad reputation. We were regarded as a team of spoilers. We tried to break down the opposition. We were offside at the place of their rucks. And it took us about 2 or 3 years for referees to realise, actually, these guys aren't that bad. And we worked and worked and worked, and we got down our penalty count to test games to like 4, 5, 6 was high, 7 was ridiculous. In fact, we played one game and we gave away 2 penalties in the whole 80 minutes. And then referees began to say, like, actually, these guys are trying to play. So you win the referees over in their heads. Now, it works the other way as well. If you're giving up lots of penalties, referees are going into a game, they say they're not preconceived notions, but their expectation is that you're sloppy. And if they see something sloppy, they're going to ping it. So you're just making a rod for your own back. And like that whole discipline thing, to me, is a massive one. So, but that's so fixable. It is so fixable. Like, it's one of the things you really control. There's no reason to give away penalties. I mean, there's different types of penalties. There's the good penalty and there's the bad penalty. The good penalty is we're trying to slow the play down, and, you know, if we don't slow this down, they're probably going to score. Take a risk, maybe I get it or maybe I don't. But it's the ones that are totally inconsequential, and, you know, you give them an easy
I'd
entry,
make the
you know?
argument. I would say there are very few good penalties to give away. Really,
Oh,
because I think if you let that seep in, I just think you give opportunity for guys to make that decision. Whereas I really think you should, like, unless it's within the last 10 minutes, I can't really see any value in having someone off the field for 10 minutes. I think there's an intangible piece that you can't see sometimes the impact of that later in the game, of that yellow card during that 10-minute period from 20 to 30 minutes. You know what I mean? The pack, you know, if it's, say it's McCarthy goes off or someone like that, I mean, everyone else has got to pick up the work he's doing around the pitch. So this always impacts you somewhere, you know, and I would be of the view that unless it's the very last play of the game, I'd be leaning towards keeping 15 guys on the pitch, because you can still go down the other side. You really impede yourself on the attacking side of the ball with someone off the pitch as well. And the way they pick up so much now, it's very hard to get away with. The frustrating thing for me is that we were having trouble at the scrum, and that was, look, South Africa did the same thing to France as well the week before, right? But it was the other ones that really caught my eye. It was the Prendergast with the kind of double offside. Like, it was miles off for 2 of them. I think it was Crowley put his hand in. Like those ones are inexcusable to me, and they weren't even in really dangerous positions. You know, sometimes you got to let the team, like, make them score it. You know, make them score in the corner, make them get the kick, make them work for the points. And I just think we're probably. I think there was a great point that Mads made there. I think Bundy's borne the brunt of a culmination of, I think, you know, poor interactions and poor attitude towards penalties, and I think they've let that seep in around. I'm using Joe McCarthy again, right, or Tyke Byrne, right, and it is a difficult one to talk about, because you're going to say, well, look, they're so competitive in there. If you say to them, to be really conscious of these penalties, do you take away that kind of competitive edge? Do you take away that Tyke Byrne, penalty that he gets you when you're on your line? Do you take that edge away from them? I think where they are at the moment, I think they probably need to focus on the penalty count. I think Eddie's right. I think it's a key issue for them.
But it has to be frustrating, look, because they were a team that gave up 1 yellow card every 9 games. Now we're giving up 1 yellow card every game. Yeah. So we were in control of that metric. And what has happened that's changed? Is it the fact that our tactical game is wrong, we're playing with less possession, so we're more likely to get penalised? Is it that we're our attack isn't working and we're getting turned over, we're getting held on, I mean, there is a reason for this, because it's not like we were always bad. We were world class at this, and suddenly now it's fallen off a cliff. So what has happened in that year period of time?
I think it's worth raising the point Eddie Jones made in actually that Brendan Fanning book you referred to earlier, and it was the notion that what gets a coach hired, what makes a coach successful, is ultimately what actually becomes their undoing. Like you see Joe Schmidt comes in, God, his attention to detail is off the charts. By the end of it all, too much detail. The players can't deal with all this detail. Andy Farrell, it's a more relaxed environment. The guys aren't, they're not shitting themselves going in there every day anymore. Now it's like, well, is that the reason why the standards have slipped not only in discipline but some other areas as well? Maybe that lack of a tight leash on the squad. In the first World Cup cycle, the Joe Schmidt muscle memory was still obviously there. He'd only just left the door. Now it's guys who have never even played under Joe Schmidt who are there and key members of the team who have no reference points of the standards that Joe would have demanded. Not to say Andy Farrell doesn't demand high standards, he obviously does, but the lads will know that Joe was a different level of detail, especially around the discipline when he was really, really strong. And that notion that as Andy Farrell goes into the second World Cup cycle, that what made him so popular and so revered and so successful is that now kind of turning, and is it too loose? Do they need a disciplinarian? These things kind of swing around in cycles a bit maybe as well.
Yeah, really interesting point, Will, and it's the same with like strength and conditioning. You'll have a strength and conditioning coach that gets great success, and it's 4 sets of 8, 4 sets of 12, mass, really tough. And then you get a new guy comes in and he changes things up, and maybe it's 3 sets of 4, and it's a bit easier, and everyone thinks he's the best guy there. Discipline starts off the field. You can talk about training and training discipline being good, being disciplined in games. Like Joe Schmidt brought in a blueprint. It was finding key cards in the hallway. You're not scraping the plates properly. If you're not 5 minutes early or 5 minutes late, if you don't know the game plan inside out, you don't deserve to play for Ireland.
And by the end, people were saying that was a terrible thing. And that was the reason the team wasn't successful. So
correct. So, look, it is cyclical. And I think when you're saying, Joe, what's it going to take to turn this? Maybe it's not going to be one tweak, one change. It's going to be probably a multitude across the training week that I'd like to think is being implemented in Portugal. And maybe it's also, as Eddie touched on there, style of play. If you're playing too high into the phase count and you're tiring yourself out and then you've got to go and defend, you're more likely to give away penalties and stupid ones at that and get yellow carded.
And Joe, just on that, and overall, that is why it is such a significant juncture, isn't it, for Andy Farrell, because he's worked under Joe, he saw the way things went under Joe, and you kind of think, and I was thinking as well of that Eddie Jones quote, it's a brilliant quote like that, your strength ultimately almost becomes your weakness. We all hear about Andy's emotional intelligence, and you will think that he will look at this now and go, I'm going to have to change something, because he's got a lot of fires to put out going into the Six Nations. So I think that for me is one of the most interesting things, is just how he's going to manage all this now.
But it'll be key to pick, you can't fix everything. And it'll be, the one thing that I've noticed with some of the Irish teams, that there's a momentum factor to this as well. When they give one away, they start giving 3 or 4 away. I think, one thing that'll be really beneficial is if he can fix this. I think Eddie's right. This is very fixable very quickly. We were talking about it during the week, Will. Whether it's a circuit breaker, whether you say, right, lads, we're just not speaking to the referee. That's it. Unless he approaches us, we're not speaking to him. So something drastic like that could change those interactions quite quickly, I think. Now, that's quite a drastic way of doing it, but I think it needs something like that. But the knock-on effect that'll have, I think, could be massive. It seems like a small factor here, and we're talking about scrums and lines. They're all important, but something small like that can really change the dynamic of how a game is going. And I think he doesn't have to fix everything, but I think if he really focuses and if he can figure out what's really important, like France, on occasion, can beat themselves. They have some dodgy pick some dodgy selections. They, of course, have serious depth and quality on the pitch. But they can work against themselves too. So if you can figure, as Mads was saying earlier on, some avenues into the game that you can get an edge, to me, it's not a foregone conclusion. Top level sports is it's minuscule differences between them that can really get accentuated if you have a bad day, but it's generally very, very tight margins. And if you can fix 1 or 2 of those things, you can do it. It's absolutely achievable. There's some absolutely outstanding players still on that pitch. Haven't played great so far this year, but remember, it's a Lions year, so these are difficult years too. So I think a break, a week away in Portugal, even though they're in the rain, could be exactly the freshness that this squad needs. And maybe a refocus on some core concepts that will really help them.
I think one of those that Luke has to be, they've got to recalibrate their attack. Their attack has gone off a cliff. Yeah. I mean, they were a really attractive team to watch. There's no doubt in my mind that the loss of Sexton has impacted that. Since Johnny went, it's not the same, and it's very hard to replace a guy like that. He He's the quarterback. He calls the shots. Everyone dances to his tune. But their metrics on attack are very poor as well. You know, they're not breaking teams down like they did. And it's ironic that they had 30 men in the field they scored against South Africa in the autumn. They can do it, but seems to be no consistency around it. You know, that last year the loss of not getting a bonus point in Wales, you know, was a killer. Yeah. Like, and the same in Paris, they got wiped, in Dublin they got wiped out by the French. But to me, that attack is whatever their picture was. It's not working anymore. They need to pivot away and attack. And I don't know if you agree with that, Mads.
No, well, what I found interesting, I do agree with it. And what I found interesting was, some of the messaging coming out of camp this week, and they were saying, look, the plan from November, the attacking plan was good, but the players weren't able to execute it, and we've gone through all the opportunities that were missed.
Yeah.
I don't fully agree with that either. And for me, I think part of a coach's responsibility is putting a plan in place that the players can execute.
Sure. Don't ask them to write checks they can't cash, you know.
There you go.
I was one of those ones, Eddie. Sorry, I meant to apologise to you for that, actually.
I do think, though, like, every issue we could talk about tonight, discipline, the attack, the scrum, even the injury list, stems from one larger macro issue hanging over the whole squad, which is no successful international team in the history of professional rugby has drawn such a large proportion of their players from one club side. So the risk was always going to be there that if that club side dropped for any reason, form, coaching changes, the knock-on effect would be massive to the international team. 11 Leinster players started the Grand Slam decider in 2023. When France won the Grand Slam in 22, there was 6 Toulouse players. When England won the Grand Slam in 16, there was only 5 Saracens players, and both of those club sides were similarly dominant. But they had far greater player pools. And now we're seeing this season Leinster, despite winning 10 in a row, getting a good seeding in Europe, we know with our eyes that they're not playing as well. And I think there was always going to be a debt that was going to have to be paid at some stage with this strategy. It was working with Andy Farrell. You know, his tenure has been very successful, but there was always that risk that if it didn't go well, what would the national team look like? And coupled with that is the non-Leinster players who supplemented the squad in the successful 2023 region. Where are they now? Hansen injured, Bundyaki in the dock for verbals. Tyg Byrne has been a penalty machine the last few weeks, even though he's a great player. So you put all that together, that's where I was kind of coming from at the start. Like, there was this overarching question that we always knew that Leinster dominance wasn't a good thing. It was almost kind of like a bubble. Like, and the bubble could be popping now, and we're going to see over the next couple of weeks with Leinster players coming in not good form, what can Andy Farrell do with that versus what he had when Lancaster was down there really humming. And I think all the other things we're talking about actually kind of stem from that, because there's so many Leinster guys in the team and they're not playing very well.
You've silenced us a few times up here, Will. It's a good point, like, and I think if you look at some of Eddie's stats there, particularly the tackling one, like, I think
that was either really good or really bad. I'm not sure.
That was good. I was thinking about it. It is interesting.
It was really good.
But like, when you have it's a concentration risk there, you're always going to have, and like, it's not surprising that some of those things have fed in. Like, I don't think Leinster's attack has been humming. At times it's looked pretty good this year. Now they haven't got all the bodies on deck, and I do think that is a factor as well. I mean, you'd miss a Keenan and a few other guys at that low, hasn't really hit form, etc. But I do think that particularly the missed tackles, this thing has really irked me for a really long time watching Leinster. I think they have, and you could see at times when they're playing the lesser teams, that really high pressure defence that they're using, the Nina Bar defence, they have allowed. They say, so. One of the best players that I think technically was Gary Ringrose coming through. But you see the amount of tackles he misses now. Now he's coming up kamikaze, and they've told him that that's okay to do that because you're pushing the attackers back into bad positions, and that's okay to miss them. But to me, he should never miss a tackle. He is just, you can see the commitment. It's never going to be a bravery thing with him. His technique should be outstanding. He's really fit. He's a great athlete.
And actually, sorry for cutting you off there, is that if you go back to the All Blacks game in November, the 2 tries they got in the second half, New Zealand to beat us, Gary was responsible for it, and I remember talking to you on the pod.
This is what I'm saying, though. I think it's fed in.
That's when you've got one player playing one system and the player inside and playing a different system.
Even when the last European game down in Bayonne, like that try that Bayonne scored off a starter play, that midfield was all over the shop when they went through. So, and you have to ask the question then is that blitz defence that the Leinster boys are repping, which arguably is not working that well for when the chips are down. Is that leaking into Ireland now as well? And is Simon Easterby having trouble getting them back into the line speed he wants for Ireland? Now, is there cross purposes there? It's hard to say, but if you follow that through, if your defence is poor, I guarantee what goes with bad defence is bad discipline, because you get into bad situations, you give up lots of penalties. So it's a cause and effect on that as well. So that could be tied to that. So, like, again, 14 tries the last Six Nations against 13 over the previous 2 years. That's a big shift on D. So, I mean, I think that there's a case to be made that are Leinster influencing, as coming out of Leinster camp into the Irish camp, are they all on the same page with Ireland as they are with Leinster, even though you could argue the Leinster page isn't that working that well either?
Yeah, like for me with the defensive system, I like the Neil Arbor defensive system, providing you've got the right players to execute it. Myself and Luke have talked at length about this. South Africa have the right players to execute that defence. They've got really agile wingers, really quick wingers. They have the ability to turn and burn when the pass is thrown over the top. We don't necessarily have that, and we've seen Leinster be exposed this year, in particular down the left, because Lowe can no longer quite get as high as you need to in that system, and when the ball does get thrown over the top, he doesn't have the speed to turn back and cover it. Tied in with that point, when you have a system, whether it's an attacking system or a defensive system, when you are put under pressure and you are gassing, and you're playing for Ireland and it's a different system, you are going to revert to type no matter what. And there are two very, very different systems. You're getting high off the line, you're trying to force attackers back on the inside. When you get beaten, you're scrambling really hard. The Irish defensive system is much more controlling. They do try and get off the line when they can, and that is their system. But because they're quite often fatigued doing it, they don't actually have the ability to get off the line. And some players do, some players don't. And as Eddie touched on there in the New Zealand game, that's when you get doglegs created, and that's when international players expose you.
But, so that's one part of the athletes that South Africa have, and they're obviously blessed with a perfect combination of athletes in that country. You think about the size they have in the tight exchanges. So yes, I agree with you on the wide parts, and they do have some outstanding athletes there who can get up and back, right? But it's on the inside really where I feel like lots of the issues are. If you think about Leinster and where the defence looks really good, it's usually against lesser opposition because they can out-muscle them in the tight exchanges. Where this defence has also come unstuck is against teams that can compete with them in the tight exchanges, and you're not going to win every single battle. South Africa win nearly, I would say, 90 to 95% of battles in those tight exchanges around the ruck. You just never get any go forward against them there. Yeah. But when you come up against a big French team, you may well you'll get some pay against Leinster there for the odd time. And you saw what La Rochelle did on quite a number of occasions against that defence, with big men, Skelton, being able to suck in defenders and get an offload away because you can't knock them back. And that's a really important part. If people are engaging you in those tight parts of the defence, they've got to be going backwards. And if you're not going backwards, and then as well, there's another part to that, which is more in line with Mads' thinking on the wide guys and the athletes there. On the harder pitches, at the end of the year, this defence is really hard to execute because it's way easier to handle the ball on the faster tracks. So I think it's a really difficult one to implement, and I think you're really onto something with that, because there does seem to be some kind of mismatch in the Ireland camp. Now the flip side of that is, and Eddie would probably be really well positioned to speak about this, I have always felt that the defence is probably the easiest thing to get organised quickly. And if they can fix that, that's an obvious hole that Ireland have at the moment. There's a problem that they have there. And if they can fix that, I think it's one of the most fixable things, because it's essentially getting people on the same page. And it's not that complex. There's more intricate things in the attack to get right, I think. But defence for me would be a big pillar that I'd be focused on if I was Andy Farrell. And if you can tweak and get that the penalty things right, I think you're not that far away if you can get those two things really good on the night.
You're suddenly going to Paris, and you know what? You're a lot tougher to beat than you've been.
Start from there, Joe.
Could I ask? Let's do a straw poll. Give me one word, and then we'll tease it out. Who would you start at 10 on Thursday night with? I just want a surname.
Sexton.
He's available.
Yeah, he's already in there. He looks in a decent nick.
Mads are in.
Like the reason this question is so hard to answer shows one of the big issues is that none of the options feel good coming off my tongue.
Okay.
So I'm recusing myself because I actually don't even want burn under protest.
Is the question, who would we pick,
Who would
or
we
who
pick?
do we think will be picked?
We'll get on to who we think will be picked. I want to know who you would
Who
pick.
we would pick,
Yeah.
okay.
So Byrne, Sinead, you're the Ireland coach.
I hear the Burn. I'm probably going to go for Prendergast. I would go for him, yeah.
Okay.
Byrne.
Yeah, I'm Byrne as well.
Crowley. Well, I'll tell you why I will.
Only one word.
One word, Eddie.
Seems I'm outnumbered. I cover myself. But I think at the moment, like, if we go to Paris with Prendergast at 10, they will burn a track down there. Like, they will be running everyone they have down, and he's going to get run over and run over and run over. It's very hard to defend against big teams in that position. And if we're trying to fix the D, like, that's not off to a great start, all right? So the second thing about Crowley is, I think he's not playing that well. I'm not making a huge case for him, but I think he's actually been good with the ball in hand if he's in a decent structured attack. He's pretty confident on the ball. He's a better defender. I think Byrne doesn't bring enough to the party with the ball in hand for me if you're trying to win something. So there's no perfect answer here. We could all be wrong, we could all be right, but I just think that Crowley brings a little more in terms of D, in terms of with the ball in his hand. The problem is his kicking game hasn't been good at the moment. And
The
if it's a
kicking is
kick,
the big issue, Eddie, isn't it?
that's
That's
off
the
the
only reason I don't
ground. That's
think-
off the ground,
And out of hand.
Yeah, out of hand.
Short out of hand
so
as well at the
I'm not
moment.
saying it's
Not
the perfect
accurate enough
solution,
early.
but I think for me he tipped. That's why I tipped towards him. But
He's
I'm
got
not
the
saying it's
muscle memory
perfect.
as well from doing it in Marseille. Like, he started that night for them down there in that brilliant win. So
Listen, I love Crowley as well. I mean, I kind of want it to be him. I think the ball in hand thing is actually a bit of a problem for him. I don't know if that's a thing with Munster, because they're kind of maybe under a bit more pressure or they're not playing as well, whatever it is. But he's not been able to direct the team around because he's taken too much on himself. And I think at clubs level, he's probably going to get a bit more pay than he'll get at international level. He'll make more breaks. He's just not as good athlete. You know, you're at the top level at international. I think his problem is that he won't be able to direct the team around, and the team need direction at the moment. And the kicking off the tee and out of hand, I think, is a problem for him at the moment. But I want it to be him, to be honest with you, because I love the bravery. I'd love to play next to him. You know, you're kind of thinking, you're watching guys and you're kind of saying, well, who would you really like to play next to? I love everything about Crowley. I love his mindset. I really love his mindset. I mean, the last-ditch tackle against Toulon at the end where he saves it at the bonus point. Like, he's the guy I want to play next to, but at the moment, he just can't get that flow on the attacking side, and the kicking is a big problem for him. So that's probably what's edging it. I agree with Will. It's tough to pick one at the moment. To me, Byrne sits right in the middle. He's not going to be a complete liability defensively, and off the tee is really the differentiator, and he's kind of solid in attack without doing any great things. And I think one thing I would say on Byrne, because he's got a bit of criticism there, he has the potential to be very good in attack, I think. You know, he's got the ball handling skills, but he hasn't really had a great run on the team. Do you know what I mean? He's kind of been in and out with Prendergast, and Prendergast, obviously, naturally, he's magic going forward. So you're always comparing there. But I think if he got a regular run on the team, he could be better there.
what about his temperament? Do you think, handling like opening night in Paris?
Well,
like
he
he's
looks
got,
to me like he wants the ball, Sinead.
Yeah,
Like
well,
I think the
he
La Rochelle
did,
one,
yeah,
to me,
yeah.
he's taken that ball. And he wants the big moment. And look, Prendergast he wasn't shying away from it either, but Byrne took it.
He did.
To me, that
And
was a
Doris
good sign.
wanted him to
But I think Crowley would take it too. I think I don't have an issue with the guys wanting I don't think the moment's too big for them. Crowley looks like he might have a bit of a technique issue, which obviously Ian could speak more to than me. But he's just having a bit of trouble off the tee. The misses are too wide for me at the moment. He's having a bit of an issue, I think. Prendergast, he's still young. Like, I think he's got time to go. I wouldn't like to be too harsh on his place kicking. I think you have to. You've been in the situation, massive pressure, and an international match. It's such fine margins. Yeah. So I give him a bit of room to breathe on that one. But it does have to be better if you want to be top class.
You said there, Prendergast magic going forward, and I feel this season he's been better again going forward. Like, he just looks his eyes in. He's feeling really good. You, of anyone that I've heard, is the most vociferous on the defence, the Prendergast defence for you. It's like non-negotiable. It's a non-starter. It's an instant eliminator.
Yeah. Couldn't. I actually hate it because, like.
You talk about it enough. You can't hate it that
No,
much.
but I do. It's such a big. No, but it's such a big topic. Like, and he's a young guy trying to find his way. I want it to go well for him, but I just can't excuse it. Like, if I was a player in the dressing room, I was saying, well, like, I'm not going to war with this fella. Like, I would just make me uncomfortable. Like, whatever about, like, Rog wasn't a great tackler, but at least he put the effort in. And he was switched on. Like if you looked at that La Rochelle match closely, like, I got pulled up on the street by a listener of the podcast, and he was a friend of the family, and I kind of said, he had to go. He said, "You're very harsh on him." He said, "His defence was better on the weekend." I said, "Hold on, look at these back and forth messages. I have all the videos here." Like, he was a complete liability to the team. Like, he nearly, if you think about I'm decimating him here again. Watch the game again. Watch where all the tries came from. Watch the one where I think that they make the break, but they kick it dead. Like, he's so badly at fault for that. He turns his back. He's just making bad decision after bad decision defensively. I just can't. For me, it's a massive liability. As Eddie said, you'd be going after him. Like, look what La Rochelle, even the 5-metre scrum.
Yeah.
Remember the 5-metre scrum
2v2,
try?
yeah.
Like, it's a 2v2.
Yeah, I know.
They don't even have their best athlete there.
I know.
It's Hastoy, and they go straight to him.
So Andy Farrell, pretty much of literally anybody in the world, would understand the importance of physicality.
That's what I think. I find it amazing.
So, but he obviously thinks it's worth it.
Well, like, the attack is a problem for them too. So, and he is the easiest fix for that. So, I know why he's doing that. But to me, it's too big a liability at the moment. I hope he gets it right. I swear, honestly, there's nothing worse than, like, as a part of a club, you're an ex-player and you're kind of part of the club. When you criticise people that harshly, it feels like a betrayal. But honestly, I have to say what I see. To me, you can't carry someone like that.
Who do you all think will play? Who do you think Andy Farrell's going to pick?
I think he picks Prendergast.
You're nodding, Eddie. You think Prendergast?
I think he will.
Yeah, and my reasoning with that is, I'd agree with what Luke has said, and I think Crowley's a born winner. We've seen that winning the URC every time. He wants to step up and be the guy. If anything, being in a Munster team that isn't performing has really hurt him, because in my view he's actually taken too much on himself because he wants to win for Munster. He's passionate about them. I'd say he's having the conversation with Andy Farrell going, oh look, I won't do that in the Irish team, I'll run the system, but look, you've got the scores on the board, your kicking out of hand hasn't been good enough, your kicking off the tee hasn't been good enough.
An overarching thing here is, I think if you go back a year, Andy Farrell decided that Prendergast was the future.
Yeah.
And we talked about that at length a couple of times, and he's backed him, and he wants him to come through. He believes in him, And a coach does that sometimes. They say, "This is my guy. I'm going to back him. He's young. He's going to make mistakes. I'll run with him." And I think that's what he's trying to get to here. Because if he doesn't pick Prendergast now, let's say Prendergast goes to the side like that, he's got to rebuild him now after this. He's got a rebuilding job with him as his confidence, and maybe if he doesn't make the start, he mightn't make the bench. Then there's a bench debate if he's not starting. So I think from that perspective, he's probably going to back his man in this situation and hope it works out. And it may work out, but I think that's the trajectory I'm looking at, is how he sees the future 2 years down the road.
It's a good point by Eddie there, because you wonder what goes into the selection of the out half. Is Andy Farrell on some level trying to vindicate a decision he made in 2024, where it was Frawley and Crowley battling, and then all of a sudden Prendergast comes in out of nowhere. He wasn't even starting for Leinster at the time. The tail wagged the dog. Prendergast then went into Leinster. How that season ended in the Six Nations ended last year. He was the Lions head coach. He didn't even pick him on the Lions tour. And now is he trying to justify it to some degree? It's hard to know exactly. But what jumps out for all the out halves we're talking about is that in 2024, say when Crowley was starting, the team was good enough to carry an out half who was learning on the job. The form was strong enough from the 2023 cycle to get Ireland over the line in the Six Nations. That is not the case now. Whoever is picked out of any of them will have to be substantially better than they've been up to this point in their international careers, because there's no one carrying them. They are going to have to be the driver, because the other players aren't playing quite as well. So it's an even bigger ask. These flaws will be even more magnified, because the slack won't be picked up to the same degree, because the guys just aren't playing as well.
Yeah.
I also wonder what the preference of the players would be. Would they want a chopping and changing at number 10? Or would they want the same person in there? Because surely by the end of the Six Nations, we've got to have that 10 going to Andy Farrell and say, you don't need to make a decision anymore, I am your man. So I would wonder, what the player's preference would be for that.
I thought he's made that decision last year. I mean, last year, Six Nations, Prendergast started, the first four games, and then Crowley started in Italy, which was kind of strange, but maybe, it's the Italy game, they're taking a role on it. But Prendergast was the man last year. Now he's flipped him in the autumn. But the autumn ones are funny because you can use the autumn. There's not a huge gamble in either of them in the autumn. There's not as much at stake, so you can split the roles. But I just feel he has to pick. He has to make a pick soon. We're too near a World Cup, because the last thing you need is, as you were saying, that flipping over and back with your 10. You've got to pick your quarterback at some point and let him get on with it. And that's why I think he'll go with him. I mean, we wouldn't go with him. We've given our reasons. But I will say one thing when you're talking about picking and selection. The coaches always know more than I do, because they're right in there. He sees what's happening in training. He knows what's going on in the camp. We're surmising.
Well, it's funny you say that, because Conor Murray was saying last week that obviously he's been in the camp very recently, and you know, the start of the week, the 9s and 10s would go into a kind of break room and have meetings. And like he was saying, Farrell will show different clips of different things. What would you do here? What would you do there? What happened? This mistake here. And it was Murray could just sense in the room. Farrell loved Prendergast's answers. Loved the way he saw the game. Loved that when like you made a mistake. What was the thinking with this pass here? Loved that Prendergast would just say, it was a shit pass, my bad. Whereas the other out halves almost tried to talk in roundabouts or tell him what he wanted to hear. And Murray was almost looking at the two of them, and it was like, oh my God, there's a meeting of minds here. So that goes to your point. There's all these little things which go into a selection.
And maybe that's why Farrell said that he's my man. It's going to take me a while to get. He's very young. It's going to take a while to bed him in. There might be some pain along the way, so that's why we go with him. And that's why I think he's going to back his man, and he has to make a pick soon.
Yeah.
We can't rotate our 10s for the next year and a half.
So.
But what does that not apply to his defence? I don't understand. Like he's so honest in there. Like, if that's I didn't hear the Murray thing, but like to me, how do you justify the other stuff? Like if that's what it is, if it's an honesty, if they see the game the same, I just can't. Like Andy Farrell's like whatever he was, you know, whatever he's done as a head coach, where he really cut his teeth was as a defence coach.
Sure.
He's a hard man. Like you shake the guy's hand, you're like, I wouldn't want to get in the way of that fella. Like he's hard as nail. It just doesn't compute with me at the moment, and I don't know why. To me, I just don't know how the meetings are going. Like when Simon Easterby is having his meeting about the defence, and like it's glaring. Like how do you justify that to the other 14 guys on the pitch, or the people you're not picking for making those mistakes? I find that he's creating a problem for himself. I think around this. Well, I think personally, I know because I've sat on bench. I've done all these things where I've sat on the side or watching. I'm going, what's going on here? It creates a bad vibe in there where people aren't held accountable for kind of basics of the game, you know. And he should be good at this, by the way, because I think he's a good enough. I was wondering at the time, is he good? He looks like a good enough athlete to me. But if he's honest, and if that's what his best trade is, what's happening on the defence?
Yeah, I think as well when you go up the levels, like you can protect someone in a URC game, somewhat in a Champions Cup game, maybe not in a knockout Champions Cup game. But when you get to international games,
it is lonely. It is
lonely, and the
Big
ability
space,
of coaches to expose tight heads, poor tacklers, that's where they cut their teeth.
There's no hiding.
There's no hiding, no. And it's the same with being a poor goal kicker. Yeah, you miss a few kicks in a URC game. It's probably not going to bite you, especially if you're playing for Leinster. If you're in the Six Nations, every kick counts, and you need your 10 to be tackling north of 80% and goal kicking north of probably 85%. And that's where the conversation probably stops when we're talking about the different options. That's why Harry's the best option for me, because he kicks his goals, he's a good defender. But I think from Farrell's point of view, he's looking at the likes of France and England and going, if our attack isn't at an 8 or a 9 out of 10, we're not going to win these games. Yeah. So maybe I'm going to take the gamble that maybe Sam gets his body in front, makes his tackle, maybe he has a better day, Johnny can sort out his goal kicking in the meantime, and that's how we're going to get over the line and get a win. But with Harry there, I don't think the attack is going to fizz enough that we're then going to get a win off the back of that.
Okay. Were you coming in?
Yeah, just because the La Rochelle game, obviously the defence from Sam Prendergast got so much attention. Like he missed 2 conversions as well. Like the goal kicking will be huge in Paris. I take Ian's point about the attack needing to fizz, but like if Ireland win, in my mind's eye, what does that game look like? I like the way Harry Byrne kicked it away to Leicester. He kicked some tough kicks away to Leicester. I think he's kicking over the ball. Obviously, the La Rochelle one people will know well. Like, are Ireland going to win a 29-28 game over in Paris? I don't see that being the case. I see if the score goes high, I see France blowing Ireland away. I think it'll have to be goal kick, maybe a slightly lower scoring game. And I think the kicking could be paramount, and that's why I think Harry Byrne for me would maybe be a good option there.
So to begin to wrap this up, people have homes to go to.
Sorry, yeah.
No, it's fascinating. Like, honestly, it's amazing listening to you guys kind of toss it all around. We'll know more in 2 months, but do you sort of feel this is akin to 2021, that day Sinead was referencing where she spoke to Farrell, and the jury was very much out on Mike Catt, it was out on Farrell, and it just took off. Do you feel we're on the cusp of like a kind of just a regrouping, sorting things out, and they're about to take off again? Or would you be a bit worried that we're actually dipping, not getting any younger, and this World Cup cycle might just not happen for us?
Well, the elephant in the room we haven't discussed tonight is the age profile of the team.
Yeah.
And if you look, I think there's 11 guys that will be, if they're all fit, will probably start at the moment, or be heavily involved, and they're all the wrong side of 30 in 18 months' time. So that's the other elephant in the room. And to be fair, one of the problems you have as a head coach, particularly in Ireland, is your options of rotating people and bringing in fresh faces. The Six Nations is not that time. You're not going to get that latitude of, well, let's give the guy a run and see what happens. There's too many chips on the table. The autumn as well, I mean, it's okay to say, like, we can run a guy against Japan or Fiji, but you're playing South Africa or New Zealand, you know, so your limit, and what often happens is you end up having to put a guy in because of injuries. So often your bolter is a fella that gets an injury. But I just think that he's got a huge job to replace a lot of those guys. Now, some of them will be fine, they're early 30s, but there's a few of them on the wrong side of the hill. I mean, you go to a tournament, and you go through the pool games and you get into the knockouts, that's when the bodies start to fall apart, you know that. And World Cup is brutal, it's relentless. So that's the elephant in the room as well. And I think until he starts to try and fix that, it's going to be hard to keep the playing going this way, you know.
Yeah. Does anyone think we're about to explode? In a good way, in a good way.
I don't know if they need to explode.
Okay, but improve.
Well, Ireland, another elephant in the room, but a positive elephant, if that's an expression, is that Ireland have been handed a World Cup draw from the gods.
Oh, that's true.
This is not 2023 going into a bear pit against South Africa with the All Blacks or France waiting in the quarterfinal. We can sit here with a degree of confidence today and say if Ireland beats Scotland and Argentina, they'll be in a World Cup semi-final. So it kind of calibrates the next 2 years differently. Like if Ireland don't have a great Six Nations, and if they get beaten in Paris as I expect them to, it's not necessarily doomsday, whereas in 2023 it would have been because the calibre of opposition was so high. We know if we can get a few players between now and then and get things right there, we have a great chance of going further in a World Cup. Do I think this team can win a World Cup like they could in 23? No. But we could still go further than we've ever gone before, absolutely. So there's still reasons to be positive as well.
Yeah,
amid the kind of the doom and gloom of this chat that I started, but I'm kind of strangely both pessimistic and optimistic at the same time.
You'd rather be having these issues now than in 9-10 months' time.
Yeah.
I think because there's lots of things that I think I can see improvement in. I think there's still guys to come back into this team that are on the edge. I think Eddie made that's a great point, but there's a World Cup in them. You know what I mean? They're 33, 32, 33, that kind of age. To me, there's still some good rugby left in those guys, you know, and you might be forced because of the injuries, as Eddie also said, to play a few guys that maybe you wouldn't have considered. So maybe we get a look at a dog bowl. We get a look at a few of these guys.
You can carry a handful of those guys in your squad, you know, early 30s.
It's
you can carry 10.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like you can accommodate a certain number of them, but if that's heavily loaded on the elderly side, it catches up with you in tournaments. So, and you can be unlucky with that, and you can be lucky with it. But I still think that there's a lot of stuff at the moment that he needs to get in front of, and if he doesn't get in front of the Six Nations, let's say the Six Nations goes south, it's the even year, which is always the worst year. You have France away, England away, like they're your, like that's why probably the Grand Slam where Johnny kicked the drop goal on the rain, and then they went to Twickenham. That was probably the Grand Slam of all Grand Slams because they won in Paris and London. Like, if you've England and France at home, you back yourself in Cardiff and Edinburgh and Rome. So he's got a really tough run in front of him. And if it goes south on that, now you're going to the summer and you're trying to fix it again. So that's why the Six Nations is going to, you know, make a big difference to where the trajectory is in the team. Hopefully it's that way, but there's so many things at the moment we're talking about it. It's hard to see it's going to take off like a rocket. Maybe there's a slight improvement.
Yeah, I think for me, I think it's unlikely that we'll beat France and England if they're close games and we're beginning to see, you know, attacking structure, defensive structure coming together. What's our kick strategy? We win our 3 home games. Then you're looking at the World Cup with a bit more optimism. Maybe we've built out a bit more depth at centre, a bit more depth in the back row. We've uncovered a bit more speed across the team. But we're not going to be able to be successful in that. Like, Argentina are good. Scotland will rate themselves, as they always do, and disappoint.
It's terrible. We're laughing at that, but
yeah. Well,
but sorry, I'll tell you what. I think England are beatable. I don't think they're as good as they think they are, as per usual.
And they think they're very good.
Yeah, like they're already talking about Le Crunch at the end of the competition against France. Like, they are beatable. They're good. They're getting better.
I think they're very good.
They're beatable, in my opinion.
I think the problem is in Twickenham, different animal.
Yeah. I like
If I had them in
England.
Dublin, I'd take your point, but I just think at the moment they've got their mojo. They're playing a very risk-adverse game that they're very good at.
They know exactly what they're doing.
Exactly, and
that's
they're very good at it.
That's my criticism.
It's not blowing the doors off, but it's winning. And they've found a formula under Borthwick that works for them, and it's very hard to beat them. And that's why if this game was in Dublin, I'd be a lot more optimistic. You know, maybe it's the game of all games and we get them. You know, and if we win in Paris and win in Twickenham, it's a grand slam here. There you go. Like, you're not going to lose in Dublin against Wales and Scotland and Italy. That's not, you could, but the momentum off those wins, if you win in Paris and you win in Twickenham, you know, the momentum off those victories is colossal. You know, like it's like a juggernaut. And that's Six Nations rugby. If you get off to a good start and the train is running down the track and everyone's on their front foot, that's the difference. You wouldn't lose a game at the front end and the second game goes, then everyone's in the back foot. So that's why this fixture list is a tough one, and it could go either way.
And of course, it's a shorter schedule, Eddie, as well. Like, there's a less. I actually think it's probably the toughest Six Nations opener this team has probably ever had, having both England and France away. Like within 3 weekends, they've never had that.
They've got rid of a rest. Got rid of a rest week. Yeah. So, in a word, where do Ireland finish in the 2026 Six Nations?
Third.
Behind the big two. Lose away both those games.
Lose
Okay.
away both.
Yeah.
I think they'll lose heavily on Thursday.
Heavily.
Yeah.
What's heavily?
15 points. Potentially, yeah.
Does anyone here think we'll win? You don't. That was the most tepid you I've ever heard.
Be happy you're in the wrong place.
Yeah.
Can I give one?
That's really scared the French, I tell you.
Can I give one reason to be positive on Thursday, though? There's one trend since Ireland have taken off under Andy Farrell has been that their best performance in every Six Nations campaign has come at the start. They've started really well and unfortunately have plateaued and probably finished with their weakest in every campaign since 2022. But they've always started well. Now the test here is the cohesion that usually allows that start is underpinned by a Leinster team not playing quite as well, but that has usually given them a leg up early doors and they've started well.
And the French often don't and grow into it. Now what are we saying? Sinead?
Yeah, I agree. Third
Okay.
for Ireland.
Third.
I think 2.
Where are we getting that?
I think England are
Oh,
not
yes.
as good as everyone thinks. Yeah.
Yeah, good.
They're getting better, but they're not that good.
I like England. I'm going to say 4th for the same reason that Will said, that we start well and tail off, and the Scots actually do the opposite.
Jesus.
So, yeah, so I think
Scotland!
That's prediction.
These people have to go home and have a weekend. Like, what are you doing to us?
Yeah.
Scotland, in Dublin. Where would that puts... Then there's heat on Farrell. Like, then it's all...
it's just
gets messy.
momentum into the competition. Could Scotland beat England round 2? Yeah, we're talking about our hard draw. Sinead mentioned not having the rest week. That really affects us. You then roll into England, the third game. After your rest week, that's when you ideally would want Scotland. You'll have a physical game against Wales, and then they'll probably be playing for something we mightn't be, and that's when they could potentially catch us.
They couldn't beat Ireland when Josh van der Fleer was thrown into the line-out and Keane Healy was playing hooker.
In their own backyard.
In their own backyard.
Yeah. Not sure in the Scotland one.
I think we win our home games. If we wouldn't play well and win our 3 home games, play away from home and play well and maybe lose, that's a good trajectory. But I think 3 is where we probably land.
Yeah. A big thanks again to Energia. They sponsor our rugby, have been brilliant sponsors, and we're very appreciative of that. The left wing is where you can get Luke and Will doing their thing all the time, as well as Indo Sport. Thank you all so much. There was such a lovely, attentive vibe in the room. It was really fun, and I'm sure you'll agree that was kind of amazing to listen to these guys chat rugby for an hour. So, round of applause for the panel. Will, Sinead, Luke, Ian, Eddie. Again, a big thank you for coming. Really appreciate it. And, we'll be doing lots of podcasts throughout the Six Nations. So thanks, everyone. Really appreciate it. And safe home, everyone. Thank you.
Well done, Chief. Awesome, buddy. Good job.